Baldur's Gate 3 is the best CRPG ever made. It's also the worst best CRPG ever made. It won Game of the Year. It sold over 15 million copies. It pulled a 30-year-old genre out of a niche it had been buried in since the late 90s and put it on the front page of every gaming publication on Earth. If you're measuring overall production value, accessibility, polish, scope, it's BG3. But best overall and best at any single thing are two different sentences. And once you start looking at the genre's history, you'll find 5 very specific places where older, smaller, weirder CRPGs still outperform the masterpiece that supposedly replaced them. When I was writing this script, I realized I don't want this to be takedown. I expect you're going to come out of this respecting BG3 more, not less. But you're also going to understand why the people who lived through the genre's first golden age keep saying the same thing. BG3 is the best CRPG ever made, except in the ways that matter most to them. Start with the writing. BG3 has over 2 million words of dialogue, fully voice-acted from end to end. It's enormous, but density of writing isn't the same as quality of writing. And when you put BG3's writing next to something like Planescape Torments, you start to notice the difference. Planescape, released in 1999, has a script of around 800,000 words, less than half of BG3. But the very first thing you do in that game is read your own back. You're a corpse on a slab. Your skin is held together by stitches and tattoos that you put there as instructions to yourself because you keep forgetting who you are. The opening question, what can change the nature of a man, is a 30-year-old design pillar that every serious CRPG writer still references. BG3 has good writing. Astarion's arc is genuinely moving. Karlach is one of the best companions Larian has ever built. But you'll rarely hit a sentence in BG3 that stops you cold the way Planescape does. The reason is structural. BG3 was written to be performed. Every line has to land in a voice actor's mouth and survive a cinematic camera angle. Planescape was written to be read. The prose is denser, weirder, more willing to be ugly. It trusts you to slow down. When you're playing BG3, you're watching a movie. When you're playing Planescape, you're reading a novel that occasionally lets you stab a Modron. Those are different art forms. And on pure writing, the older one still wins. Now the second thing, and this is where Fallout 2 does something BG3 still can't do. BG3 has choices, a lot of them. You can side with the goblins or the tieflings, save Halsin or let him die, romance Shadowheart or break her heart on the cliff. But pay attention to what happens after Act 1. Most of those choices funnel back toward the same major beats. The Absolute is still the threat. The Netherbrain is still the final boss. The shape of Act 3 doesn't change much based on who you killed in Act 1. Fallout 2, released in 1998, will let you finish entire quest lines that the game then refuses to acknowledge again. You can wipe out an entire town and the game will let you. You can get married while drunk in New Reno. Your spouse will follow you across the wasteland for the rest of the game. You can sell your spouse into slavery. The game will let you. And then a slaver will reference it 3 towns over. That's the thing BG3 doesn't really do. Its world is reactive within a scene, but the simulation doesn't persist past the questline. Fallout 2 was built on a worldview that said your choices should leave scars on the map, even when those scars are inconvenient. That cost the game polish. Fallout 2 has some of the most broken questlines in CRPG history, but the trade-off was a world that actually remembered you. BG3 has a world that responds to you and then politely forgets. Number 3 is encounter design, and this one is going to sting if you love BG3's combat. BG3 has the best looking combat in the genre. The verticality, the elemental interactions, the way you can shove a hag off a roof or stack barrels to vaporize a dragon, incredible. But spectacle and tactical depth are not the same thing. Baldur's Gate 2, released in the year 2000, runs on 2nd edition AD&D rules that are mathematically prehistoric. But the encounters in that game are tuned with a precision BG3 rarely matches. The fight against Kangax the Lich, who one-shots you with Imprison if you don't have specific spells prepped, the Twisted Room, the Shade Lord, Watcher's Keep, These are encounters where the game assumes you've read the manual, prepared, and are willing to lose 3 or 4 times before you understand what you're supposed to do. BG3's hardest fights, Raphael, the Netherbrain, and Sir, look incredible, but most of them can be brute forced. Stack haste, summon every conjurable creature, throw fireballs from elevation, and watch the encounter melt. BG3 combat is wider, more options, more interactions, more party comps that work. BG2 combat is deeper, the puzzle is harder, the win matters more. You're not getting a worse experience with BG3, you're getting a more accessible one. Those are different things. Here's where you should ask yourself something. If BG3 is so good, and it is, why do you keep hearing people who played the older games say it's missing something? It's not nostalgia. People who say the old games were better usually do mean nostalgia, but in the CRPG community, it's specific. They're pointing at things, real things. They're saying, I miss when my choices broke the world. I miss when the writing assumed I was patient. I miss when an encounter could humiliate me and make me read a wiki at 2 in the morning. You don't have to agree with them. But once you've seen the list, you can't pretend the list is empty. Number 4 is role-playing. Actual role-playing, not romance scenes. In BG3, your character has a class, a race, a background, and a set of dialogue checks based on your stats. That's role-playing in the modern sense. But in Disco Elysium, released in 2019, your character has 24 internal voices that argue with you in real time. Your inland empire wants you to talk to a necktie, your electrochemistry wants you to take whatever drug is closest, your volition is begging you to stop. Every single skill is a personality, and they fight each other inside your head while you're trying to investigate a murder you might have committed. You can't do that in BG3. Your Astarian romancing rogue with 16 charisma is a stat block wearing a costume. Your detective in Disco Elysium is a fractured psychological mess that the game makes you live inside. Disco Elysium did this with no combat at all, just dialogue and skill checks. It's still considered one of the most successful role-playing experiments ever made. BG3's role-playing is broad and fun and full of options. Disco Elysium's is narrow and deep and almost uncomfortably honest. If you measure role-playing by how much the game lets you become someone who isn't you, I think the old game wins. The 5th thing is the ending, and this is where BG3's success works against it. When you finish BG3, you get a slideshow. It's a good slideshow. Companions appear, tell you what they did next, and the camera lingers on a sunset. Emotional, polished, and it's been the genre standard since Fallout 1 invented the format in 1997. Here's the problem. Fallout 1's slideshow was harsher. If you saved the town thrived. If you ignored the town died. If you helped the wrong faction, you got told flatly in narration that the wasteland would suffer for what you chose. The slideshow wasn't comfort, it was reckoning. BG3's ending tries to give every companion a satisfying arc. Generous, but it also means the ending almost never punishes you. Even your worst playthrough lands on something hopeful. Compare that to Fallout 2, where entire towns can be erased from the map because of decisions you barely remember making. Or Pillars of Eternity, where the gods you served have to live with what you did to them. Those endings carry weight because they're willing to be sad. BG3's ending is willing to be triumphant. That's not the same currency. So is BG3 the best CRPG ever made? By modern standards, honestly, probably yes. It does more things at higher quality than any single game in the genre's history. But it's not the deepest writer. It's not the most reactive world. It's not the hardest tactical puzzle. It's not the most ambitious role-playing simulation. And it's not the most honest ending. Those crowns still belong to older games, smaller games, games that did one thing harder than anyone else and accepted they couldn't do everything. BG3 achieves the good enough level at more things than any other CRPG. BG3 is the broadest CRPG ever made. The classics were the deepest. And the difference between broad and deep is the difference between a game that impresses you for 90 hours and a game that lives in your head for 20 years. BG3 is the first one. The list above is the second.